Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jordan here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'll be playing the Greenskins, and I'm going to be facing off against an Empire opponent. So a classical matchup in that respect, and we are ready for action. It is raining, and the lads are ready. So as far as my army composition goes, I have an Orc War Boss. I feel like he's probably the most cost-effective leader against the Empire. He's armored, shielded, pretty good stats, in general. And he's also armor piercing, but more importantly, he can carry a potion. That's something you have to be very aware of when playing against Empire, is that this is very common. You see a General of the Empire, you see an Empire Captain, as well as an Amber Wizard. So the three of those units, when combined with a Feral Manticore, can just be absolutely devastating to kind of jumping on your heroes. So having the potion, as well as kind of having him not on the Wyvern, is very, very important, because then you can keep him among the troops, and they can support him in that respect. As far as my backline goes, a lot of Empire players, I've been playing against recently have just been having very low tier kind of infantry lines, haven't been investing more in Cav, and then also in the Goon Squad. So I didn't invest too heavily in my infantry. I have two groups of Night Goblin lads, which I actually really like for the front line. They do have the stalk ability, even though it doesn't say it in their tooltip, which means they can get pretty close to the enemy forces before they're aware of them. And that's also kind of a nice psychological thing, because they're just going to account for these forces, and they're going to allocate their defenses to accommodate these three groups, whereas you will have these lads in the front. The poison's pretty nice also, so if they do have like great swords or, decent infantry in the front line, applying that initial poison and allowing your stronger infantry to follow up is a pretty good synergy in my opinion. I also have two Doomdiver catapults. Right here, I have an Orc Shaman for the Big Wa. And then in the forest here, this is kind of my favorite aspect of the army. I have two Goblin Big Bosses, two Orc Warboy Biggins, and then I also believe I have a group of Forest Goblin Spider Riders. So I really like the synergy of these units in dealing with Demogryph Knights and other elite Empire Cav. It's really nice because these guys, the Goblin Big Bosses, they can get in there, apply poison, and then you can follow up with the Orc Boar Boys. And then if the Goblin Big Bosses aren't able to get that optimal engagement, you have the Forest Goblin Spider Riders who can apply the poison before the fighting starts. So if he's kind of hovering over you with the General of the Empire or troops like that, they can apply the poison before the fighting even starts. So I feel like it's pretty strong. Also, this is a great map for Vanguard deployment and kind of harassing in the wing. So I have a group of Goblin Wolf Riders right here, and then a second group who I Vanguarded over here. So my opponent, hopefully he will fall victim to that, because you see he does have a fairly open back here. So if I can sneak them around, I think I should be able to get a good engagement here. So as far as his army goes, he has a General of the Empire, Empire Captain, very typical. He also has a Feral Manticore and an Amber Wizard. So this is actually one of the few times I've seen the Amber Wizard not mounted, but I think he was kind of pinching pennies elsewhere and allowing him to get some more troops here in the back. So he also has some Demogryph Knights with halberds there. He has Spearmen in the front line, kind of mixed in with Swordsmen, and then in the secondary line, he has Great Swords. He has four groups of Crossbowmen, which are pretty good against Greenskins, because Biggins and, most Greenskin infantry aren't terribly heavily armored. I mean, even the Orc War Boss only has 70 armor, so something to take into account there. He has two cannons, probably most likely to focus on my Black Orcs and elite units, and then he has two groups of Spearmen in the wings protecting. So pretty awesome composition there. So we're going to go ahead and get started, guys. So I just start sticking my Doomdiver catapults on my opponent's leadership, and they're actually really good, and you'll see they're accurate. They kind of even adjust for his pattern of side strafing here, and they're able to make some good contact right away. So I was pretty happy about the value of my Doomdiver catapults, and they're continuing to just tag him, and they've already done a good 7% HP damage on him, which is pretty valuable. The closer you can get the enemy leadership to using their potions, the better. So right now, I kind of had a bit of a decision to make, because I did invest in two Doomdiver catapults. So basically, I had to leave some troops back here, or at least keep my Cav, kind of my mobile Goon Squad here to protect them, because that's a big investment. If it was just one Doomdiver catapult, I would have been a little more comfortable just advancing and leaving it to the dogs, but when I do invest in two, I wanted to protect my investment. So advancing there. At the same time, my main force is indeed advancing. The Black Orcs and Biggins and the lads are closing in, and I basically just want to close this distance as fast as possible, because he does have two cannons, which are going to rain some serious fire down on my troops over here. I'm also advancing my Goblin Wolf Riders over here, but I was not aware of these Demogryph Knights, so they are well hidden there, and definitely a scary situation for the lads over there. I'm also advancing the Goblin Wolf Riders on the western part of the map, and I should be able to come around and get a pretty good engagement. I don't think he noticed this group, which I was pretty happy about. So his Goon Squad is kind of just looking for an opportunity to harass and engage on my troops here, but thankfully the Doomdiver catapults are doing a good job pressuring the enemy lord. You can see he's, like I mentioned before, he's taken a little bit of HP damage, but he is using these trees, and these poor Gobbos are just flying into the trees and meeting their untimely deaths in that regard. So he does a very smart play. He detaches the Manticore from this group, and he's going to kind of keep it back here in the wings to kind of keep me honest, which means I either have to keep all these troops back here to just kind of eradicate it, or I can just detach a group of Orc Boars. But then if he decides to fly the Manticore across the battlefield, I'm not going to have that to support my maid Cav force. So very well played on my opponent's part. Right now, I do finally see the Demogryph Knights, and I see them lurking in the wings. So this was actually the first time I became cognizant of them, and I knew they were thinking about maybe pressuring my wings here, though they are the Halberds version, so they're not going to be terribly devastating against Biggins. Something that's nice about Biggins is they do have a bit of anti-large bonus. That's, you know, it's helpful in this matchup, so I can't complain. So I do send an Orc Boar group back here. I believe I detach one, and then I send the rest of my Goon Squad over here. And you can see this group I put in a separate control group, and the rest of these guys are going to come over here and hopefully be able to deal with this Demogryph Knight threat. As those two cannons, I mentioned them earlier, they're doing a great job. And these Black Orcs are already down to 44 models, and that's one of my only elite infantry. And also that crossbowman fire is just tearing into the Biggins here. So very well played on my opponent's part. He's using those crossbowmen to great results. So I did detach my Black Orcs as well as some Biggins over here, and I get a nice wrap on these Demogryph Knights, who actually tried to charge and do a little bit of harassment, but unfortunately for him, the Forest Goblin Spider Riders have now kind of surrounded, and they're applying poison. So let's go ahead and take a look, guys. You see their move speed is down to 58, so that's really slow. And then the Orc Warboy Biggins are able to come in and pressure them, so that's what I was talking about, guys. The synergy between the Goblin Spider Riders and then also the Big Boss, and the Shaman is going to use a buff here to make these troops just absolute war machines with the Fist of Work, providing melee defense, weapon damage, as well as melee attack. So these Demogryph Knights are really, really put down. At the same time, though, my opponent did a really good job segmenting my forces. He invested a lot over here, pulling in his leadership, his general, his Empire Captain, who has already used the potion, because the Black Orcs are here with their armor piercing, and then also the Orc Boar Boys do have that anti-large armor piercing capability, so very, very strong in that respect. Unfortunately for me, that kind of left the lads alone here in the front line, and they're doing an okay job against the Spearmen, but they're not the best combatants. But I suppose against Spearmen they'll do pretty well, but you know, there's great swords and all kinds of other elite infantry in here, so the lads are going to definitely run back to the jungle. They've had enough of this unfun business here. So at the same time, I am doing quite well in this particular engagement up here. The General of the Empire did land and try and harass me, but it's a very risky gambit to land against the Greenskins when they have Orc Boars as well as Goblin Big Bosses on the Spiders. You're more often than not, you're not going to get away, because you guys, let's take a look here. His movement speed is still 90, so he's actually not poisoned at the moment, but these guys are doing a pretty good job keeping up with them. And look at their melee attack, 136. It is just heavy duty. So they're definitely going to be making some good contact with the General of the Empire, and you can see he now is poisoned. Either a Goblin Big Boss or another heroic unit, or the Spider Riders, were able to poison him, making his movement speed relatively similar to my my Boars, who are not going to let him get away. So I also switched my Doom Diver fire onto him because they are heat seeking and he is extremely low, so I wanted to make sure that I got my value there. Unfortunately, his melee force is really, really intact here, and he was able to do pretty well. I did miss showing you guys the Goblin Warfighters did come in and just gank those cannons and did a really good job in doing so, and they're also coming in and doing a pretty great job against these missile troops here, just kind of charging in there. And these are absolutely one of my favorite units in the game. For how cheap they are, you're getting such good value. I mean, they're getting in here, destroying these crossbowmen. They also shut down my opponent's cannons really effectively. You can see the cannon crews are just absolutely devastated because he invested most of his mobile troops in winning this particular engagement up here. So right now, the Black Orcs and kind of the Biggins that I sent over here are going to re-engage with my opponent's melee forces, so this is going to be pretty decent. Biggins are going to just cut through Spearmen like butter. It's a very, very good matchup. Even against Greatswords, Biggins, they don't have armor piercing, but if you take a look, their weapon strength is quite strong. They have really high melee attacks, so they'll do pretty good against the Greatswords as well, especially when you buff them with the Big Wah and really make sure they got those high combat stats. So right now, you can see the Fist of Gork is going to make them very elite infantry. Over here, what was left of my Black Orcs is a very small group, but they're still confident despite that. They're engaged with some of these Greatswords here and are doing pretty well. And my Orc Boars here, I'm just kind of chasing down these Demogryph Knights to make sure they don't come off the battlefield. And now it's the return of the lads. They kind of routed off into the jungle, but now once the melee force advanced up, I kind of like kept them in the wings and waited. Now they're going to come back and just tear into these guys. And you can see the Doom Divers are focusing here, and the lads are ready for action. So they're going to charge in there. They're going to poison these guys, slow them, and do some pretty good work. So, man, they're such cool units. I really like them. So they're getting in there and routing off the crossbowmen, which were actually one of the big determining factors was actually routing off these crossbowmen, because they were absolutely raining hell down on my troops up here and really starting to whittle me down. So the Doom Divers definitely taking out a few of their own guys, but regardless, they're doing pretty good here. So you can see most of these crossbowmen are broken and are being chased off the battlefield by the Night Goblin lads. So very good there. Over here, his swordsmen and other infantry are kind of holding the line to the best of their abilities, but the Orc Boars are coming back from their victorious campaign, and they're doing a great job just running through those great swords. And what's nice is the Orc Boars, they do have armor piercing, and even though they're kind of inherently designed to deal with large units, they're going to do pretty well against great swords and those type of troops. So they come in, do some good shock damage, and my opponent retaliates by using a Flock of Doom here, which is pretty good, especially against my clustered group of units. This group of Biggins is continuing to fight over here, and they're still steady despite the fact that they're fighting against greatswords as well as swordsmen. So definitely a testament to the value you're going to get out of your Biggins, especially with the big wall. So the Knight Goblins here were able to kind of deal with those crossbowmen, so now they're going to come and collapse on the flank of my opponent. And they look like they're running pretty fast. Let's go ahead and take a look. So they got 33 run speed, and if you look at some of these greatswords here, well, I guess they're poisoned, so I believe they're quite a bit faster than them, though. So they're collapsing here, and some Biggins here are going to come and finish off the last of my opponent's forces. His Empire Captain is indeed broken, and I'm not sure what else he has. It looks like he does have his Feral Manticore back here, and it's kind of been back here harassing these Goblin Doomdiver Catapult crews all day, but basically it'll kind of chase off one, and it'll leave a few of them, so I just kind of bring them back periodically, and, you know, they still, as you guys saw, were continuing to fire and generate some good results, so... Here in the forest, kind of the last pocket of my opponent's forces are collapsing, led by the Davy Crockett himself, who's riding around with his antlers over there, doing a pretty good job, but some spearmen are going to come in here, but against Biggins and Night Goblin lads, who are going to make their already pretty low combat stats even worse, it's going to be a very, very bad day for them, so... Yeah, the Biggins are just so good against low-tier infantry, and, you know, even against large units, Biggins are a pretty solid investment, so... Let's go ahead and take a big overhead view. So he does have the Amber Wizard here, who was kind of trapped down by these troops, and I do use a Gaze of Mork, which I believe is just going to actually do more damage than good. It usually just hits my own guys, and yeah, you can see it took out that boar right there. So I just wanted to kind of end with a little bit of style and see if it would pan out for me. So, you know, it's actually funny because I battlecasted this game, and for some reason my audio quality on my microphone was like kind of screwed up. So unfortunately, I couldn't use the battlecast, but... as far as just the breakdown of troops goes, the Biggins were just MVPs this game. They were able to detach, trap those Demigryph Knights, and when the Demis tried to retreat, I kind of had that goon squad of poison troops waiting for them, which was basically lock them down. And Demis are a big investment, so if they get trapped like that against low-tier troops, it's going to be a bad day for you. The Great Cannons did pretty good. I mean, he decimated my Black Orcs before they were able to get there, and you can see the Black Orcs didn't do a whole lot this game. His crossbowmen did a pretty good job, but unfortunately, I wish I had shown you guys a little more, but they did fall victim to these Goblin Wolf Riders. And when you're paying 300 for a unit like a Goblin Wolf Riders, and they come in and just generate that much value, man, they're such a good unit. Greatswords did pretty well. The Spearmen actually did okay. They're okay in this matchup. He was using them to protect his forces mainly, but I think he actually pulled them to the front line and left some of his stuff undefended in the back, but again, I didn't get a good look at that. The Amber Wizard, always a perpetual threat. And the General of the Empire, unfortunately, the battle could have gone very differently if his General of the Empire had escaped, because he did have a lot of these low-tier, kind of low leadership units that fell victim to that leadership hit. But regardless, it was a great game to my opponent, Jomo. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that Greenskin battle. Have an excellent night, and take care.